Folks, this is House Corrections and Institutions. It's Tuesday, May 20th. We had quite a bit of technical glitch. So we finally got it straightened out, and we're going to continue our conversation on recruitment, retention of correctional officers, correctional staff. We sort of left off with a question about, do we reach out to tech centers to do some recruiting? There is on the PowerPoint, there's a page that deals with this, so let's start with that. So welcome back. Tanya, got your name. Welcome back, Tanya.
I wanted to, the previous slide, I think this is key to our, the recruitment and the staffing is each facility, 23, each facility hired a facility experienced staff supervisor. And so each facility has a position that's sole, one of it's experience, staff experience, which is include recruiting and retention. So each facility has their own designated position that works on recruiting. And then my team is assigned to two facilities apiece, and they coordinate and collaborate. So I just think that's important because those positions are key in recruiting for those facilities.
And that started calendar year 23?
Yes. Yep.
So you've been going on almost 2 years.
I don't remember exact month that they were all hired on, but yes, gives us a little more focus on each facility.
I also say, just to add to that point, I think those facilities were running that position prior to any sort of official position number. Maybe had people dedicated, that person dedicated to that cause.
So that going back to the tech center, that helps also having someone up to focus on their local communities, their tech centers, their it puts them on site there. So it's not like someone coming from Waterbury to going to Southern or something like that.
Because each facility has its own culture.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for committee members to be aware. Each facility has its own culture. And that's driven by who's being housed there, but it's also driven by staff as well and driven by the region.
And do those coaches come from the staff? Or are they complete? I mean, do they have experience within the facility that they're hiring for?
Yes. So when we fill those positions, each position hired those, they had, qualifications it needed to have and that sort of thing. And so when we filled those positions, there's a job spec and everything for that position. So they were hired specifically.
But they've had experience in the facility?
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
We do have partnerships with, as we talked about, the tech centers, local high schools, universities, and some community partners that have reached out to us. And my team, who does a lot of training, and so they'll go into either a high school or a tech center. In fact, Northern University or Linden Institute, excuse me, has asked us to go in and present to their staff on our ACT training to assist them. And so that's starting to spread, and we're going into other communities to provide some altered training to our community partners, which has been a great resource and a great collaboration between corrections and our facilities, which has helped also spread the word about corrections and introduce it to folks, which has been good.
So is it presented more in terms of a connection with law enforcement and security, or is it presented more in terms of more of a holistic approach that yes, there's security issues, but there's also behavioral issues and social issues that you also need, the officers also need to deal with as well? So is it presented more holistically?
Yes, it is. And our trainers, they alter the training a bit. So it's not an academy training, but it's fit for the community. And it really helps it shows the community what we do when we're talking to our incarcerated and our staff. And I think it brings a humanization to that role. And it shows them how we communicate. And so it is a holistic thing. And these are people we're dealing with, and sharing that experience. And they're also using it to help them when they're, whether it's a school or I think it was a bus. What was the name of it?
It's the bus company out of Burlington.
Had asked us to come and provide that training to them as well, because it's communication skills. Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. It shares their communication skills with them because it's a technique that they can use. And so it's good for it feels good for our staff to be able to share something that they do with our community partners to assist them. And again, it builds those relationships with our community partners. Career fairs and community events, we do all over the state. Each of the experienced staff supervisors in the facilities will do different events around their community. If there's a job fair, whether it's in actually the fairgrounds or however there is, they connect and they will attend those. We also attended Gillette Stadium. This year there was one that we sent a team out to represent Vermont and share our job listings, things like that. Trunk or treat is something, Green Up Day, Upper Valley Haven volunteering that we recently attended. These are all, again, based in their communities. It gets our teams out there and promotes corrections and gets us involved in our local community. It's been really successful.
I mean, it seems like really great branding.
It
You
is,
know.
and it puts our staff who live in these communities out there sharing the training that we have, introducing themselves, sharing their career path. And so it's a great collaboration. With
The TV ads, I just want to say this before, but it's just like the TV ads seem to me that it is a positive reinforcement. For anybody other than the people there, I would feel good about working there if I saw that branding and those ads. I think they're really positive myself because I work out during that time, so I see those things all the time.
I'm cooking
So-
dinner.
Yeah, no, it's in the morning. Because they run on between 5:30 and 6, so I think that's really well done, just for what it's worth.
it's good to, like I said, it's that community connection that, the stigma of corrections. It's all the team goes out and they are meeting people, talking to people, introducing themselves. Hey, this is what I do. You should come check us out, that kind of thing.
Were you on one?
I was, yes.
I saw you the other day in that one. Yeah,
Famous now.
he is. I'm gonna get his signature.
Autographs included.
Yeah.
Is that the series called Corrections Corner? It's
Minute.
minutes.
Yes.
So there's one piece that talks about how deplorable the women's facility is.
Yeah.
But is that conducive to what we're talking about?
Well, that was more about the replacement of the women's facility. That was more than a corrections minute.
No, that's exactly what it
Was
was.
it a corrections?
I saw it on CAX News.
It was a corrections minute actually for the month of May, so that one was our most recent spot. There's one, we kind of have two separate campaigns with WCAX. One of which is the corrections minute, which airs one new advertisement each month, and the other one is these like 30-second kind of baseline spots that run continuously, which is what that Stephen is featured on. And the corrections minute really focuses on both recruitment and rebranding of the department, as well as communicating some of our really like priority initiatives, such as the women's facility, which is why we focused the month of May on that project that we're doing.
And that featured former Representative Mary Beth Redmond on that.
And the contract that we have with them, it's a 2-year contract. The maximum allowable to be spent is $360,000.
Per year?
That's that
Or-
total, that's total.
Total,
And
150.
in between 2023 and 2024, that campaign had 21 million impressions and 164,000 clicks. So that means that someone clicked on the ad to like go to the DOC website or careers.vermont.gov that had been clicked 160,000 times.
But you don't know how many folks who have come in and gone through the academy are there because of the corrections minute, though, do you?
That is not something, as far as I know, that we ask, and that
Do you track, like, in the academy, we've shared that with the committee in the past, how have you heard about us? Social
Yes,
media,
yeah.
from a friend, through some of our ads. I don't know if we get as specific as which ad campaign, but we do track that information. We have shared it with the committee in the past. Jim, but we could pull that.
The last point, was just the Gillette Stadium as a specific thing that was specifically geared towards military and veteran community. It was a partnership between groupmilitary.com and Disabled American Veterans. So it was exclusive to that community, and they signed up through that community and their connections to family members and stuff like that. So that was the reason why we did that specific event, is because we have such a large military presence within our correction facilities, that we support them wholeheartedly. So that was really important for us to do that.
Questions, thoughts?
I just want to confirm what Isaac said, Caleb told about, it is in the demographic and intro surveys we provide, academy recruits, and the question does say, like, how did you hear about us? And one of the options is media, advertisements, including TV and radio. We are actually in the process of making this form electronic, so we can more easily do data analytics with the information, so we don't regularly analyze that on a large scale unless Jim's team is doing that one.
Well, the Corrections Minute, I would see it as twofold. One, for a recruiting tool, but also another way of getting out to the public what corrections really is, because it's so hidden and people have no concept what it is. So I see it as twofold.
Mhm.
For that. I already did.
Oh,
Way ahead of you.
Always ahead of
I'm
you.
always.
That's why I get the big
Two
bucks.
steps
right?
behind.
The Energizer Bunny, it's trying to catch up. Anything else on this one? Yeah, let's keep going.
I think next is about our podcast series. We've just started, has not gone public yet, but we've just started creating podcasts. And we have a few of them ready to go to be reviewed, and then those will be made public. But this is another great way of us to really introduce staff, what they do, and promote the department. And we just have excited about this, because I think what it can do is individually at each position, introduce staff, walk through a facility, and introduce what they do, that kind of thing, and share it. YouTube is something that there's a lot of folks that are using nowadays. I know social media, but it's another way of sharing the positions and promoting it. And so we're really excited about this. Hoping to go live as soon as we get the okay to go ahead with we have done 4 of them. Just once the executive team approves that, then they will be available to the public. And we have a whole series of things that we're going to be producing on the podcast.
Who's the host? Haley?
Actually, it's one of my coordinators that works for me is the one who is managing the podcast, and he's done a great job introducing himself to be a TV star. So it's been fun, and it's a great way we just did a peer support and introduced the peer support coordinator, talk about what their role is around the state. And so it's a great way to introduce some of these positions that people might not know about. So we're trying to get with the times and become more available to the public. This is a great way to do it. So. Social presence, again, social media department facility, site specific. The podcast, the social media, each site has a social media page that the staff experience supervisor manages. And also we have a department page that we manage. So again, just using more social media out there to promote the department and positions. Let's see, professional development training. This goes towards our retention piece. We have started offering trainings we started with the supervisor level and on down. We have what they call core strengths, excellence in supervision, emotional intelligence, performance management interview, and evaluation training. And these are trainings that are offered to staff that work to promote their development, their supervisory skills. And we've had great response from staff in this, and it's a good way to provide staff with development skills and improve their supervision skills, which then trickles down to the way they supervise staff and help improve that culture. So this is done through our academy. Some of the folks on my team, I trained with Nick Fourier, who's the other deputy director at the academy, offering these trainings, and they've been they have been, well, let's see, core strengths, for example, from 2022 to 25, we've had 160 staff complete that training. And so it's, with each one we offer, there's a waiting list to get on, to get into. So staff are really interested in development, which is good. That ultimately helps the culture of the department. The post-secondary education, which I talked about, our SEPSI program, our partnership with CCV has just been phenomenal. We are actually, our first Remote Together Academy is happening right now. It just started Monday, where we're piloting staff, instead of staying 6 weeks over at the academy, they have an option to attend a offsite at a CCV location. So this is a way of us to bring in people who say, I can't go to the academy because it's 6 weeks away from my family. Again, we're piloting this to see if we can attract more staff or more applicants by saying, you don't need to spend 6 weeks. You do have to go some days, but you can travel daily to our CCV site here, and we have staff on site there. CCV has partnered with us in having the class online and the staff in another location. So again, this is a pilot, but we've heard from staff that or applicants, I can't apply, I can't go because I can't spend 6 weeks away from my family. So this is a way to look at that and say, how can we do this different? And so if this is successful, there could be opportunities to hold session down south to attract folks down in that area. So again, it just started this week, so we're hopeful, but see how that works. And we also have a partnership, a longstanding partnership with Springfield College for post-secondary education, which is also been successful, integrated with CCV and the academy. So staff have a lot of opportunity for higher education and again, development. CCV is now also offered to family members of staff, which has also been an interest to staff. In fact, we have a total of 15 family members in this semester attending, and a total of 19 staff in this semester, which summer is a little bit difficult for enrollment, but that's where we are currently. Been a big interest of staff and family. Let's see, internal development, still on that one. Development of all staff inclusive membership program. So initially I had implemented a mentorship program for women, helping new cadets get through. It's a tough career. So we had a mentorship for women. We've just offered it to all staff across the state. And so I was just saying the other day, I had so many people looking for an application for mentorship that it's really growing. And so we're expanding that program, which has been great for development, not only for the mentees, but also the mentors, the staff that want to be mentors. The Women's Leadership Initiative that we have in place, we have a women's leadership group. We meet every few months, I think, and we just did a volunteer day down at Upper Valley Haven, the Women's Leadership Group. It's been great to promote women in corrections. Most all those women are also mentors, so we're sharing our leadership with others as well, which has been great. In addition to mentorship, we have job shadowing. If you just want to see what does that position do? There's an opportunity to spend a day with staff to learn something about that position. We have several folks interested in the shadow program right now. In our trainer development program, we have several train the trainer kind of thing if you want to be a trainer. So we develop our own staff to train as well. So these are all areas of development for staff in working towards that retention piece that we know that we need to, so again, staff and staffing is key to our other initiatives. And so providing this to staff to make them want to stay and support them in the development we're finding is key, and staff are looking for that. So.
We also regularly send staff through bachelor Vermont AHS Leadership Academy for the agency, as well as the statewide leadership academy.
Can we speed this up just a little? Because I'm looking at the time and I know we've got kind of another meeting around 3 for some of us with Ben. So I want to get through this and I want to have time for the SCA as well.
And this is just the last few slides here, just make, awareness of what we offer staff as far as retention goes, because we can recruit all we want, but if we can't keep them, it doesn't matter what our numbers are, our applicant numbers. So Again, we have peer support and inclusion on staff. We do daily and monthly wellness challenges for staff, providing different opportunities, things to help give a holistic approach to our staff. Consistent messaging as far as those wellness opportunities go. We are supporting a family support group for staff that work in the department. Their families, we're helping facilitate that group so the families can get together and support each other. We have a rewards and recognition committee with events, wellness-related trainings, the traumatic stress management, suicide prevention, that several staff are involved in the training for trainers. We're also I'm working on a wellness specialist who has a canine handler, which would be for staff only to have a comfort dog available to staff that will be traveling to all sites and focus on wellness. And so that's something that I built a position and we're working through that process to get that position going. And then our staff wellness committee. And that was just kind of a quick rundown. Any questions?
And our peer support team has legislative confidentiality. Bill.
Yeah.
Actually, the chair's bill that just passed into law a few years ago by this body is taken up by this committee, giving full confidentiality protections to our peer support team. How many folks do we have on support?
Yeah. This is correctional officer to correctional officer.
Yes.
Yes.
They deploy after traumatic events at a facility.
Yeah. But they're available anytime, not just for incidents, but you're struggling at home, there's peer support available. I think we have, I want to say 20 members currently, and they're trained by our clinician. So they're actually trained to have these debriefings and things with staff. And so they're deployed. Each site has them, each facility has them. There's regional teams, and so they're available by a phone call when needed.
I can speak personally about that. We had a staff member pass away very tragically, unexpectedly in central office, maybe a year or so ago. Did all of our supportive housing. We worked for long-term at Pathways, Emily, and that was so obviously we had peer support on hand at central office, which is usually not where they're at. Usually they're out in facilities and talking to folks, but just can't say enough positive things about them and their empathy and the professionalism they bring to their work.
And I think the last thing is the data-driven decision-making. We look to track and think, luckily we have a great data team to track. We do departure interviews, exit interviews, transfer interviews when you're getting promoted or transferring to another job, stay interviews, why are you here, why do you stay here, surveys, facility culture assessments, because we need to know why are you here, why, what's making you leave, so we can build on that and improve. So, and those are things that we track. That was another quick overview, but.
Just a few more slides here, because I know this committee very much likes data, so we'll make this quick. Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about. So we just want to share some data. This is from the US Census, looking at corrections monthly pay. And you can see Vermont is the green line, the US median is the gray line. So for calendar year 2024, Vermont's correctional pay was 39% above the US median.
So the US median, is that other states, state correctional facilities? Does that also include the core civic and any of the privates?
It's just, this is from the public employment and payroll data from census. So I don't think it would include something like core civic.
Sean and then Troy.
Does that include overtime?
This is gross monthly pay. Yep. So, and this is, I should say, for not just correctional officers, the bulk of it is COs, but it's for all corrections departments.
Okay.
Statewide.
Gotcha, thank you. That was it.
That was my,
Well,
a twofer.
And just looking regionally at Northeast states, and we showed you this before, but this is the last several years. 2020, the red is the staffing FTE full-time equivalent change. The blue is pay increase, and Vermont is on the right.
Is that base pay or is that everything?
This is again the full same data set.
Okay.
And then when we look at pay versus staffing, 2015, 2024, pay is on the left. You can see the large increase starting in 2022 to 2023, and number of staff in the department on the right.
So it'd be interesting to see this dip that happened in 2021 to 22. If that dip would have been as,
Yes, sir.
if we hadn't had COVID.
Oh, no.
Just don't know. And I'm also assuming your staff is starting to age out as well. No?
I mean, I think we do have some folks that are, I'm seeing it, superintendent, that level, as far as the like COs, of course, I'm not in the facilities, I don't know, I don't have all that data, but I feel like I see it more. I don't know what you think, Steve, as far as
Yeah, I just.
the higher levels.
There's a fair amount of people who pass probably a year or two that are at that point where they're retired, looking to retire or at least considering it because of their time of services.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, based on like DHR data, and I've spoken with some, the DHR data counterpart, Doug Pine, but we don't typically actually see people retire that much from security positions, right? You're gonna move around the department, you're gonna move into different roles. A lot of people close to retirement or choose to retire on like a PO kind of job or the operation and control office. So we see a lot more retirements come out of there or central office as people move around the department. Because as you can imagine, like the hours and standing all day and just the job of anything in security in a facility, not saying people don't retire out of it, but it is less common than retiring out of different positions. So
Cool.
I think that's I would say retirements are less of a problem for that.
Their public staffing dashboard does have demographic data.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so if you're interested.
I know it's apples and oranges, but Vermont correctional staff numbers on the right. Love to see the incarcerated number in reference to the staffing numbers. Can you give
It's
me?
the
a-
same
thing.
curve. It really is.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah. Starting in 2020, you see a dip, and then when the courts reopen, you see it come back up,
Really?
which is interesting. And I think it's just correlational and not causal, by the way.
We used to be 1,600, 1,800 pre-COVID, and we
Well,
went
we're-
down to 800, 900.
Getting back today,
But we're
we're
getting-
over 1,500.
Yeah, it's.
And our facility is over 150.
Mhm.
6 years, yeah. We were at about 90 during COVID.
Yeah.
But for the whole incarcerated, it was about 1,800 pre-COVID, and then during COVID, it was 800, 900.
Talking about that joint justice, we'll be presenting some population data because it is changing pretty rapidly. And that's causing stress in facilities and our staff.
Yeah, if you don't have enough staff. it's-
The reason I asked is because what I keep hearing is that we're so understaffed. We're working overtime in major areas and yet we're surviving. And now, well, I understand. I'm not saying we're okay. I'm just saying that it's interesting that the numbers of incarcerated versus the staff would follow. I wouldn't expect that. That's interesting.
I think COVID had a real impact on that. COVID really did. I mean, DOC took a real hit during COVID. I mean, it was really managing, as Commissioner Baker said at the time, this is just like a cruise ship. Every facility, because you want to make sure it doesn't spread in that facility. So people were locked down. People that were eligible for furlough or parole, a lot of them were released. Staffing, if they contacted COVID, they were out. And that put pressure on those remaining, and then those remaining came down with COVID. I mean, it was just turmoil for 2 years. It really had an impact on DLC. COVID did.
It's like that nationwide,
Uh,
there came correctional staffing crisis.
Then if an inmate had COVID, they had to be isolated, and because you didn't want it to spread, it could spread through the facility so quickly.
And our goal of this presentation, Chair, representative to your question, is not to say that everything is going great at corrections. And I think you'll hear that from our labor partners, that that's certainly not the case, and that it is not to sugarcoat the crisis that we are in. And you can look at this, that 50% of folks point to excessive work hours being the reason that folks are leaving the department. I mean, our deployable staff numbers, like we said, are not where we want them to be. And we remain in crisis, as do many other states around the country. And so I think the point of this presentation is to show that there has been a lot of work done both at a programmatic scale and then also when it comes to financial investment of Vermont taxpayer dollars into the system, but a lot of work remains. Jess, I might turn this over to you to talk about.
I just want to, I just want one more, just what, Sean, I just want to add one quick thing is during COVID, even I wrote COVID protocols and I was on part of that team, on the team. But even though our staffing is the way it is, there are some staff, most of our staff are so dedicated and it's hard, but they do the work and they love it. So I just didn't want to it is difficult and we hear how busy everyone is all the time, but you go into, I've been into these facilities, there's I'll block through fire for that supervisor, I'll do whatever he wants. But it's a great team. So I just wanted to add that staff are liking what they're doing.
Well, it shows enjoyable aspects, 42% coworkers. Sean?
Just, yeah, quick, I actually think this is great data to have, so thank you. But like, how many people is that representing? Like, how many people have you asked for this? Is that 25 people, 250, you know?
I can speak to that. So, in the past, I want to say about 1.5 years is when we started doing exit surveys. So Tanya mentioned exit interviews. Far less people choose to do that, right? Because I mean, that's like a full blown, you're sitting down with someone and you're really talking about why you left. So what this does is this depends on a couple things to happen, and our staff experience supervisors really helped us to get more numbers. So when someone goes to their supervisor and says, I'm putting in my 2 weeks, their supervisor is supposed to sit down and put their information in a departure form, where the person can provide an email address, personal or work. And the moment that gets submitted, they get a survey and from the commissioner, and then they get a reminder survey a week later. This does require someone to put it in though, because nothing else can trigger it like on DHR's end or anything like that. Prior to the staff experience supervisors, we were getting about 30% because we would get information from DHR compliance with doing that, right? Which were like, these numbers aren't great. We're not going to report the numbers. The staff experience supervisors got us up to over 50% of individuals being put in. And of those, around 40% actually opt in to do the survey. So we're at 81 individuals, and that's mainly for the last year, just because, per facility. And that's because we kind of, the original individuals, the people who chose to put their names in basically was a small subsample, whereas now that we're getting a lot more compliance, we feel really comfortable that these answers are at least relatively a good sample of those who are leaving. And so what we did here is we looked at the top contributors for leaving, but also a question asks what did you enjoy about the DOC? Because that's part of retention as well, right? Not only why did you leave, but what did you like about being here? What we see is, of course, the grueling demands of their hours, their schedule, and then, culture, which we know is vague, but that's also driving some of it. What was interesting is that pay is an enjoyable aspect and a contributor. So I found that really interesting. You could check as many as you wanted. But I found it also interesting that pay was a higher enjoyable aspect than a contributor for leaving. But I found it really interesting that it would make both. And as you notice, the enjoyable aspects are all about the job that they do and their coworkers. And we find that also in the all staff survey that the vast majority of people agree that they like people that they work with and they enjoy the job that they do. And that's always been the case since we started surveying staff.
So Kevin and Connor, I don't think you finished up, did you?
I'm going back, this chart with the numbers of employees. So in COVID, we literally had 20% less people incarcerated.
At least.
Okay.
Yeah, from 1,600 to 1,000 or something.
Yeah, okay,
For a
all
while.
right, I just wanted to
No,
make
it
sure.
dropped steep, and by the way, that's a national trend here. Everyone started, so a few things happened. People started reevaluating who was incarcerated and finding out who people could release, but also the courts shut down. So we were seeing less detainees, and now we're seeing the result of that backlog, and the numbers tick back up as the courts are going and churning.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I was understanding.
No, I mean, it was a ridiculous
You
reduction.
should have those population charts in your binder.
You also can find them on our website. We started that during COVID, and you'll see a chart that shows trends since sometime in 2020 of daily population counts.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just reading the workforce report from 24 here, and one stat's really sticking out with me here. Correctional officers 1, we have 312, and the turnover rate's 41.1%. You look at correctional officer 2, 103 of them, 7.8%. That's a huge difference, right? And
Oh, yeah.
now a few of those things I can tell, okay, you know, you've been there long enough, you know, you're getting paid better. Some of the new ones are coming in, maybe right out of the academy and saying, I didn't sign up for this, right?
Yes.
But it just makes me like, what can we extract from that? What are some things we can take? Are we classifying people right? Or after they're off probation, if we move them to a CO2, would they consider it more of a career than a job, right? Like, because that's just a big difference. Then I look at probation officers, 1.9% remember right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've noticed that. We've done a lot of attrition analyses, and what we find is if people are gonna leave, they typically do so within the first 6 months, with the apex of that being 3 months. And there is a lot of that where someone will go through the academy or whatever, and then they'll be like, this is not the job for me. And by the time you kind of go to CO2, you've probably decided this job is for you for now at least, right? And so we do see a lot of that. There have been initiatives, this points to here, this officer retention, these are academy graduates. There have been efforts that the department has made. So one of them was no mandated overtime for new academy graduates for the first 6 weeks, in the effort to kind of get them stabilized in the job before you just throw excessive hours at them. They can volunteer for them. And what we're seeing is that was implemented early this year, so the 2025 number. I mainly want to highlight the 0 to 3 months, which is the one all the way over on the far left. But you see that big jump from prior years as far as retention numbers. And that's mainly due to, we think, that overtime, because that was the only thing that really changed for those few classes. So the department's kind of shifted views a little. So we talked a lot about recruitment and ways we can recruit better, but honestly, they're doing a great job of recruitment. We have academy class sizes of 30, 40 people. You know, we're getting a lot of people in the door, and the problem is retention. And Commissioner Baker's, you know, his famous quote, but the data suggests that that's the case. So you're looking at those turnover rates, right? And so they're trying to shift the idea, though, from make an entire career out of corrections, which I don't think sits well with Gen Zers very much, into use this as professional development, and let's keep you long enough that it's basically we don't lose them before the next academy. And maybe when we're more staffed, people do choose a career out of corrections because it's a great career. But instead of the burden being like, we need to keep people in someone forever, it's how can we keep people long enough that the staff aren't basically hemorrhaging in effect of like some facilities, they lose all the amount of academy graduates they had last time by the next academy. So they're always operating at a deficit. And that's not an easy work environment. So how can we keep people longer so that doesn't happen? And the people who are going to self-select out can. But yeah, we've definitely noticed that trend.
Can I just end kind of on an open-ended question, right?
Okay, sure.
So like, it's a crisis, right? I know it's getting better, but when I get emails, it's help, you know, like, please do something.
Yeah.
And I feel a bit helpless because I think we need to know from the executive branch, what do we need to do? What resources do you need? What legislative changes? Is it government operations? Is it up here? So what do you need from us to like get this in better shape here and stop the bleeding? Because I don't feel like we can't do, we got to do something, right? Like we got to do something and we got to be partners on this. Like, yeah.
Which is why we've shifted a lot to retention and staff wellness, right? Because like people are telling us that's why they're leaving is, you know, these excessive work hours, culture, things like that, things that we could work on. They're things that are hard to work on if you can't ever get more staff in, how are the work hours going to get better? Right. And so there have been initiatives. There have been the central ops division who handles all the hospital coverage, which helped POs so that they can maybe go in the facility and help, but also helps facility staff because they're not sitting in hospitals, right? So it's all these initiatives really coming together to try to work on retention. We have seen improvements. Like we are still in a crisis, but if you look on our staff dashboard on our website under hours, you can see OT hours for the facilities. Like there was a time when the OT hours had peaked and they're starting to go down, but there are still people working grueling long hours. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not, right? And so I think the commissioner has presented different initiatives and ways that we can partner that we can probably bring up again, but this is a topic of a lot of work groups and conversations with the department. And it's an entire strategic plan work to just that. We're going to just that.
And that's why I mentioned in the beginning, our strategic plan starts with our staff and staffing, because we won't be able to facilitate or implement any of our other initiatives if we don't have the staff to do it. And so we focus on staff and their wellness, their families, making this a better place for them, supporting them. And so I know that the staff experience supervisors in the facilities are now meeting, because we're like, let's keep those cadets, not 3 years or 10 years, like Jess said, but 6 months. So they're meeting with them. We have check-ins with them regularly, the first month, the second month, sitting down, how are you doing? What can we do for you? That kind of thing, to keep them in the door. What can we do for you kind of thing. And so we recognize that we need to how can we retain them? And so all of our initiatives, the wellness, the peer support, the CCV, the family support groups, we need to, the wellness position that I'm working on with the canine, the comfort dog, how can we provide, this isn't an easy career, and nationwide where staffing is not good. So what can we do to make this place enticing for staff, and how can we help them stay? So that's what my two focuses on.
Yeah, we've presented some of these slides before, but these are from the commissioner, but essentially fundamental system change to attack that very problem, Connor, but looking at everything, alert bracelets, expanded Wi-Fi, radar perimeters, like we said, a consolidated hospital coverage and transport team, building a new LMS system that can free up staff time. So staff spend a lot of time trying to get LMS to work, recruit, retain, train. I mean, we have a lot of plans and then we put into place some of these as well. I mean, new facilities, adding HVAC for our facilities at a faster rate. I know that's something where we have a lot of support from our labor partners and something that staff are crying out for, and we are working with BGS trying to get that up as quickly as possible. And if you could build us a new women's facility, we would take that. I think folks at CRCF would really appreciate it. So there's a lot of ideas.
Joe?
I'm gonna withdraw my question in consideration of time constraints and the SEA that we needs a window of time of some sort.
Anything else? Because I do want to move it along with the SCA. Anything else for this? This has been really helpful. I'm sure it's going to spark some conversations and thoughts. We keep talking about recruiting. We keep talking about retention. It's been an ongoing issue for a long time. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's switch spaces, and Steve, come on.
This is a document that BSEA submitted, and I happen to have 14 copies because I did it twice by mistake.
As it should be. Our document should be copied twice.
Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Identify yourself for the record.
Sure. I'm Steve Howard. I am the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association. You got a lot of testimony from central office, and I'm going to give you the perspective of the folks who work on the front lines, which is very different from what you just heard in many cases. I want to start by saying the best recruiters for the Department of Corrections traditionally, and I'm quoting the great Dave Bellini, who was president of VSEA and worked in corrections for over 40 years. The best recruiters are the folks who work in corrections. When they are willing to go to their friends and family and say, come work here, it's a good place to work. That is the most effective marketing and recruiting you can have. Mostly what our members say is they wouldn't ask their worst enemy to do that at the moment. And that is because they're working 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift. Just talked to a woman who works in Southern State who worked 11 16-hour shifts in a row and said, I cannot do this anymore. And left. So our members feel that this is a crisis situation. It's an emergency, and it's getting a very slow response. It's not getting the kind of response that an emergency and a crisis should get. Madam Chair, you participated in a meeting on March 11th, in which the spouses of correctional officers came to meet with the governor and begged him to do something. Begged him to do something. And we are still waiting for that something. We are very frustrated, our members are very frustrated with the pace at which this is being addressed. I would say that the problem is pretty widespread. St. Johnsbury is doing a little bit better than the rest of the facilities, but not a day goes by when I don't get desperate calls or emails from COs, particularly at Northern, particularly at Southern, begging for help. And so I think we have to look at the charts and graphs with a grain of salt, because the real human suffering that is occurring by our members on the front lines is real, and they have lost hope that anyone's coming to help them. I think our members are astonished. We learned just a week or so ago, after months of asking, we have the same problem, Representative, that you have. We used to be able to get, before there was a department, we used to be able to get data directly from the department. Now we're sent to DHR to get that data, which apparently they have and could provide to us, but they don't anymore. They did before they had a department, but they don't now. Our members are astonished that just over the border in New York, that there are 2,000 correctional officers who were just fired by the state of New York. And that the state of Vermont has informed us that they don't have any plan to recruit those folks. No plan. The whole recruitment team hasn't been sent to New York to find those 2,000 people. That's very frustrating for our members, who think some of the folks who have come over without any effort are trained and they're ready to go. And it seems to us very frustrating that that's not, it's not occurring. I want to point you to the handout that Phil just referred to. These are some quotes that sort of summarize the response that our members, our leaders throughout the state gave us when we were asked them to give us the information that they would like us to present to you. And the current situation, I think, can be summed up in the first quote that you see there, where you see a sense of frustration that we have come time and time again, asking for help from those folks who have the power to help. And the response has not really come in a way that satisfies our members. The second quote you'll see there, well, let me just say that our members are very clear about what has worked in the past. All of this is great. We support all that you just saw on the PowerPoint. We're not against that, except for the ads. Our members feel that those ads should stop. In fact, they've written to the Secretary of Administration asking for those ads to stop because they propose or promise to people something that doesn't exist, which is a work-life balance. And our members who are side by side with workers who are leaving are told that they're leaving because they were promised a work-life balance and they got 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift, and they feel lied to. And so our members have asked the Secretary of Administration, they've asked in person and they're going to ask in writing that those ads stop until a work-life balance can actually happen. Our members believe that in an urgent crisis situation, we need to bring in as many people as we can to cover overtime shifts so that people can have a break from the facility. And we see that as the number one reason why people leave. They don't have the work-life balance they're promised, they're overworked, they're exhausted, they can't continue to do the work, and they leave. And so we have an emergency situation that requires an emergency leadership. And so we need to incentivize the field to come in and help on their days off. We need to help folks who are coming in on their days off to feel better about coming in on their days off so that we can alleviate the crisis. That's the first step. We have an emergency situation that needs emergency leadership. Then after we stabilize it, and it's going to take a year or two to at least see that happen, but we have to focus on stabilizing it and stopping the bleeding. We believe, our members believe, that the management culture of the department needs to be examined by the legislature. It needs to be examined by outside independent forces because the management culture of the department also causes a great deal of angst amongst our members and causes them to leave. They don't feel supported by the management. They don't feel the management has their back. And sometimes they'll tell their union they care more about the incarcerated than they do about us. And that shows up in the UVM study, in the PRIM report in Springfield. And so I think we have to first invest heavily in getting people in to cover the shifts, to come to the job permanently and to stay in the job, stabilize the emergency situation. And then we have to have a very serious look at the management culture, which our members believe needs to be reformed. One of the things that our members suggested to me, and you see it a little bit in the first quote, is that we hope that the administration, the public, the media, the legislature will listen to the workers. The workers are telling you what they need. They're telling you what will work. And yet the effort seems to be to do everything but that, which is and it's not really the legislature, but everything but that, to make the case against significant investments in the wages and the benefits of frontline workers. And we saw that in a survey that we just recently did, where 89% of the respondents, it was about 200 respondents, said that increasing wages and improving steps was their top priority. And 84% said improving overtime compensation was their top priority. So we have management saying it's not money, it's not money, it's not money. We have the people who are doing the work on the front line saying it's money, it's money, it's money. And I know the administration doesn't want to hear that, and no administration ever does, but it's what our members really believe. I also included in this, on the backside, you'll see there's some comments from our union reps who are assigned to corrections. And one of our union reps has 10 years of experience representing corrections. Another one is new, but has 33 years of experience in the Department of Corrections in Vermont. Working for VSEA is his second job in his lifetime. And they offer some analysis as to what's really happening. And so I just brought those to you so you could see, get a flavor for what our members report to us and what they're telling us is really happening, what they're experiencing on the front lines directly. I think we have the data, I think, is interesting. Like looking at the data from Northern that you heard earlier, that there were 66 positions. This morning, I heard from our members at Northern that there are actually 57. And that the negotiated number for going to the 223 schedule, the minimum negotiated number, is 79. So that is, I think, part of the problem as well. What our members see on the schedule every day in their facility and what central office is reporting to you today is different. I don't know why, but I just know that what our members are seeing from the schedule they see in front of them is different this morning than what you just heard this afternoon. So I don't know why that happens. It's happened over time, but consistently we hear different numbers than what the central office puts out from what folks are seeing on the schedule.
So is it because one end may be just counting correctional officers and the other end is counting correctional officers and supervisors?
When I asked about the 57, they said these are people who are available to work. I'm not sure. I don't know what that mix is, but I'm making an assumption that it's available to work in security positions.
Well, maybe the questions have to be asked the same question.
That could be it. I just know that the data that we get from our members is often different than what central office reports.
We've heard this continuously, so that begs the question, how is the question being asked?
That's true. That is an important factor. So I think those are the.
Speaking of questions, we have a question.
Sure.
First question of the day. I'm confused. Obviously there's a problem. I don't think anybody discusses the problem. But you mentioned New York, and I know several of us have brought the issue up when the firings happened. Why aren't we recruiting over there? So I've been told by multiple individuals from the top that we are recruiting over there. So I'm confused about the discrepancy on one saying, no, we're not, and then one being told we are. So, or maybe is the difference of what recruiting looks like. I don't know, but it's confusing because both can't be true.
Yeah, I think we would love it if they were recruiting there. The answer that we received after months of asking was we are not recruiting there and we have no plan to. And so that was disturbing to our members.
So, but can someone clarify
Yeah,
this?
because I was told by the
Steve?
commissioner.
Steve?
We can clarify.
Yeah, Steve?
So I have somewhat direct involvement because one of my sites that I work with directly is Northwest State Correctional Facility out of Swanton. And that staff experience supervisor he has done paid advertisements in Plattsburgh specifically. And we've also worked with WCX to send targeting over to the Plattsburgh, that Eastern New York line as well. There's a couple of different things happening right now. So I have some facts and figures that I've been tracking since the strike. So we had 11 applications from New York DOC for or even current staff members. We've hired 4 of them. 2 have opted out, and 1 was passed on due to some other issues that they've had. They didn't leave on good terms outside of the strike termination. And 2 of those 2 applicants additionally were passed on by DHR because there's some work that was done to try and request higher in range pay. It was just, from what I'm being told from that facility, which is Marble Valley specifically in Rutland, that their pay was too high and we couldn't come up to a reasonable match. And what DHR is saying is because it was so much higher out of range of everyone else, it wouldn't be fair and equitable. So we are making attempts. That facility specifically and Swanton is making attempts, social media and things like that, paid advertising to recruit out of New York. But it's definitely coming down to the pay, because some of those people that are coming over have been 10, 11, 12, 15, 20 years. And it's to the point where the people who are getting hired are like, we need a job, can't go without pay, and we're just gonna accept what we can get.
We also do career fairs in New York, just like we do here, because Chittenden, Northwest are close to that border. We do have, how many staff do we have in New York right now?
Northwest is roughly, nothing specific, they said a rough estimate, close to 50% of the staff are from New York currently, which isn't a direct number from the strike, it's just in general.
And as it stated, that word of mouth spreads in New York, and there's a lot of folks that live in it. They talk to friends, bring them in from New York, especially during that strike. So there's definitely communication going on about that and efforts being done.
So that's great. That's very positive. I mean, we heard from the chief of operations that there was no recruiting happening and there was no plan for recruiting. Maybe there's some communication issues there that need to be resolved. It did take quite a while to get that answer. We did ask the commissioner, the deputy secretary of AHS. It took us a long time to get that information, which is not conducive in an emergency situation that we're in. But I think you heard the key element. We couldn't match their pay, which supports what our members are saying and have been saying for quite some time. We've got to make those investments. Those are issues that we have to negotiate with the administration. So we're not asking the legislature to do anything in that relationship, but we are asking you to use the power and influence you have with the administration to take what our members are telling them seriously. All this is great. We use peer support all the time. We recommend people to go to peer support all the time. We connect with peer support. We support all that stuff. But ultimately what the workers are telling you is that in this labor market, we are not competitive and we have got to get competitive. And this is a serious situation because I understand the budget challenges that we face. There's no question about that. But this is human beings' lives we're talking about. And you heard in that meeting, Madam Chair, a spouse who was on the phone with her husband when he fell asleep and drove off the side of the road. You heard about the CEO who has replaced 4 bumpers from falling asleep. Our members' biggest concern is that they're going to fall asleep and plow into a minivan full of kids. That is their biggest concern. And it happened in Maine. Happened in May, and of course, the state tried to throw the CEO under. The CEO was charged criminally after having worked massive amounts of overtime. So VSEA stands ready to work in the bargaining process to alleviate these problems, but we've got to really focus on the fact that from the folks on the front lines, this is what they are saying by overwhelming amounts, overwhelming numbers, is the answer to the problem. And we know it worked. We had an agreement with the state that expired right after Commissioner Baker left and Commissioner Demmel started. That was working. Overtime was coming down. People were asking for overtime. It was working. We should have stuck with that. We should have stayed with it. And we have this history of up and down, up and down. We get something that's working, administration pulls the rug out, and we go crashing down again. So I think we have to come to terms with those investments cannot be temporary. They have to be permanent. They have to be. We're just not, we're in a world, and the commissioner, I think, rightly testifies to this, that the number of workers in Vermont is shrinking. The number of workers willing to do this very challenging work is even smaller. And that means the value of that work is greater. And that's what we haven't come to terms with yet. And that's really where I think the problem lies.
We have some questions here, Mary, and then Sean.
A couple of different things. I guess for DOC, so do you have actual boots on the ground in New York doing different types of job recruitment for DOC in Vermont? Or is it just all kind of by ads on the TV? Because those are fine as supplement, but they're expensive. And it's really the hands and the boots on the ground doing the work, connecting. So what do you have going on that? Forgive me my allergies.
So specifically Fort Drum military base and the Plattsburgh Mall are the two target areas that are mainly hit by an actual person in person outside of the media.
So did you specifically, though, when all of those folks were laid off, did you specifically have a special meeting for them to meet with your staff or workers to talk about the possibility of coming to Vermont?
Yeah, that was done independently by the facility staff experience supervisors, because they're the ones that essentially would organize that, specifically Northwest, probably was one of the biggest.
So did it happen or did it not?
I to the best of my knowledge, it did.
I guess to Steve, a couple questions. I remember when Officer Baker or Commissioner Baker was here and she did start getting a handle on the ups and downs. Is the weekend still also an issue, I'm sure, with all the 16-hour days? But I know even the weekends, because we were hearing from staff that, oh my gosh, we occasionally would get a weekend off, which prior to that, they really weren't getting. Is that still a huge issue?
Yes, I think overall, the promise of the 2-2-3 schedule never materialized.
Right.
And it's not that we don't, it's not that VSEA opposes the 2-2-3 schedule. If you have the staff and you're honest about who's really available, you're not including people who are at the academy, you're not including people on military leave, you're not including people on TRD, which is what happened at some facilities. In order to hit the target number, they included people who were not available to work. If you have the people and they're actually available to work, 2-2-3 will provide that leave.
So 2-2-3 is 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off.
And it could work.
It works if you have enough staff.
It can work if you have enough staff. And unfortunately, what's happening.
You calculate the staff to get to that.
Yeah, to the target number.
Target number.
Our members are losing confidence in that proposal. They had a lot of hope for it. They're losing confidence in it because it's just not, the work-life balance is not materializing. And so therefore they won't go out and recruit people because they don't want to expose people to 11, 16-hour shifts in a row. So we have a problem. We've got to we've got to address it as if it were an emergency in the crisis that it is, which includes bringing in people, incentivizing people to come work. But when 2,000 trained correctional officers are laid off, it's a full court press. All of central office goes to New York. Like everybody goes there. This is an emergency. We have a possibility of 2,000 people. That kind of a response would indicate to our members that they really see it as an emergency. They see us. They understand what we're talking about.
Boots on the ground. The other thing is, earlier in the session, we heard where there were a number of times where there was not enough staff on some of the shifts. That was why I asked for, can you show us data as to what was going on within our facilities? Never got it until today. That's 3 months later. We were also told at one point, I think about a year ago, that on occasion, but rarely, administration might come in and help, but that rarely happened. We're really cut, and both DOC and you both can answer that question so I can hear it from both of you. But what is actually going on? Does administration, when your numbers are down, as far as staff, do you actually go in to help support the team that's on doesn't have enough staff working?
I can tell you there's limited what someone like me could do, for example, because I don't have the training, but I did in fact. It does happen at times. I myself has done a shift at a hospital because they were short-staffed and I didn't want to take someone from a facility. So I myself went in and did hospital coverage with another officer. So we had the two. I know there's other folks at Central that have done that before. I can't give you specific numbers, but enough experience, I've done it. And others have done it. I know the field still does. There are some staff that still work overtime. I know the hospital team has helped tremendously with not having a full staff from the facility to cover the hospital coverages, so that's been helpful. But as far as anyone else.
I appreciate that, but once again, you can't really quantify what's actually being done or not, because obviously it's not working.
I think you've raised a very valid point, Representative Morrissey. Our view, going back to Commissioner Baker and maybe even beyond Commissioner Baker, I've been around 12 years here now, so I've gone through a few commissioners. But in this particular staffing crisis, which really started about 5 or 6 years ago, we have asked commissioners to assign managers who were trained at taxpayer expense, who've gone through the academy, to hospital coverage and to the facilities. Not just because if we're all in this together, it should be all of us, but also because the cultural divide between the facilities and the central office needs to be broken down. And one of the ways that could happen, we believe, is if managers were in the facilities at a post. If they were in the buildings and actually experiencing what correctional officers experience, and you saw in the Prim report, they don't understand my job, and they don't care to ask me my advice. Came up overwhelmingly in that study, and that was a multi-year study. That would be helped by managers who have often come from facilities and from the field. They started there and they ended up in central office, and good for them. That's great. Now it's a crisis and it's an emergency, and they should be back in the facilities and back at the hospitals, showing the folks on the front line that they have their back and that they are willing to cover overtime shifts so that people can go home.
Well, and that is what has always worked in most businesses. If you're willing to roll up your sleeves next to the people that are working for you, that's a real good role model and encourages good, work relationships and more.
Yeah, it would definitely help with that problem. There's no doubt about it. It would definitely help with that problem.
So we really are back to square one.
Yeah, I think from our members' perspective, as you saw in the first quote, it's a slow roll response to an urgent crisis. And we're frustrated by that. We hope we can overcome it. We're working with the administration anywhere and any way we can to get a solution that reflects what our members believe will solve the problem. And what we would ask this committee to do, because the legislature can't get involved in bargaining and we're not asking you to, but you do have influence and you do have the ability to inspire the leaders at the top to respond more robustly and to treat it as a crisis. It's fine that it's a national crisis. It's great. It's fine that we've invested more resources. That's great. But the truth is it's not working and we have to do more. We can't just say, well, it's a national problem and we've spent some money on it, so therefore we're not going to do it anymore. People are suffering. Employees of the state of Vermont are suffering. Their families are suffering, and we have to do more. We have no choice. So our ask to you is to stay on top of the issue in your oversight role, which I have no doubt you will, but to use every lever of pressure and influence you have with the executive branch to convince them to pick up the pace in terms of the response.
What kind of pay increase are you looking for?
Well, we haven't started bargaining, and
roughly.
Well, I don't know that I wouldn't make that decision. That would be a decision that our bargaining teams would make.
Yeah. Just wondering what kind of money you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, you really should be saying that, right? I don't think before you're bargaining.
Yeah, we aren't gonna. Yeah, that number has not been divulged to me, but I will say that our members have put a number of ideas before the administration, and we are hopeful that they will accept some of those.
So
It's fair to say that it won't be less.
That's fair to say.
so for a CO1, what is the starting pay? What's the range?
$22 and change.
An hour?
Yeah.
And then,
And then there's shift differentials and overtime.
so what does an average? I know it's going to get into overtime issues, but for a CO starting, what are they making a year, do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea. It would depend on how much overtime they're working.
$35.81 is the average CO1 wage.
22.
I think that includes all of like.
That includes bennies? That includes the bennies or the overtime?
That's all with the overtime and the shift differentials that Steve was just talking about.
What's the average number of hours worked?
Well, it's-
50.
Didn't say. It's.
2,500 probably or something.
A year?
Yes. Yeah. So the goal is to get the overtime down. I mean, our members would actually prefer to get back to 8-hour shifts. That's probably, long in the, that's probably long in the rear view mirror. They would prefer 8-hour shifts. Some would like 5 12-hour shifts, but they certainly are tired of the 16-hour shifts. That's just too much to ask of people in an already difficult job. And I have no doubt that, that there are good people in the management who understand the suffering. It's how it causes our members to lack faith and lose hope is that the response isn't coming rapidly enough to address it. And we've seen it work before. We know what works. And so we would hope that in a collaborative way, we could come to some agreement that would have the same results that we've had previously when we've made increased investments and incentivize people to come help.
So when does your current contract expire?
Next June.
So
Yeah.
you'll be starting negotiations this fall.
In August, yeah.
Thank you. So this chart is 3 years old. It's pay change from 2020 to 23. And it would indicate that with a 36% increase in that period compared to the other surrounding states of 24, 14, 13, that the administration's trying to do something. So we're either digging out of such a huge hole that even 36% increase isn't enough.
Right.
Bingo.
Or something else is going on.
You had side letters during that time.
We have. It's two things. It's that we're digging out of a big hole and we need to do more than the 36% because the numbers are showing that it's not working at the level that we're at now. And that the first step is to stabilize the crisis situation. give people a break so that they're not exhausted and feel like they can't do this job anymore. And then our members believe that the management culture of the department needs serious examination and change. They feel that is a contributing factor over and above the money, or in addition to the money, that causes people to not want to work for the department.
Okay, so I'm hearing you loud and clear that pay and overtime. Let's assume we fix that. What are the other issues that management isn't listening to? I guess I haven't heard those specifics.
Well, I think there's a few issues. One, I think retaliation in the corrections has been identified by our members as a huge problem, that people feel that they can't speak out, can't tell the truth, they'll be retaliated against. That's one big issue. The second is that the management doesn't understand their job, doesn't care to consult them on how policies should be implemented, what changes should be made. And just general, the feeling is that the management doesn't have their back. And in this kind of a dangerous situation, you don't want to work in a place where you feel unsafe. And you also don't want to work in a place where you don't think the management's going to have your back. And so that's not universal. There are some managers who people really like, but there's just a general culture that our members identify as a problem. A lot of people say we need money. Yes, we need to invest more. That alone won't solve it. We also have to, once we stabilize the situation, we also have to address the management.
But what would be an example of them not having their back?
I think there are a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern about folks who are put on temporary relief from duty for excessive amounts of time. That often, I'll give you a good example. And this was during Commissioner Baker's time. There was a big story written about the women's facility that led to a big media story and a big flurry of activity. Zero discipline imposed in that situation. Zero discipline. And the situation was brought to light by a trained VSEA steward and ignored by the management. Those managers were promoted to central office. That is completely just demoralizing for our members, and it sends a message. Your opinion doesn't matter. You don't matter. We're going to reward the managers. We're not going to listen to the folks on the ground.
But that was years ago, right?
It was, but we're still living with the repercussions.
Do you have a current example where they don't have their back? Yeah, that sounds horrible. That's years ago.
Well, they're working 16-hour shifts, and
we got that. Too much overtime. Not
right.
enough
So
pay. How else isn't management backing up the COs?
So what I was going to say is the 16-hour shifts in the hospital coverage. If you're out there working those hours, excessive hours, and there's nobody coming from central office to help you, that's a problem. I will say that we don't have a lot of information about the commissioner's proposal on the expanded COS team, which, VSEA supports the COS team and it supports expanding it. The challenge that our members see with it, because they weren't consulted about it, is that it's pulling people out of the facilities to a position that's a much higher pay grade to come and cover in facilities so people can have breaks rather than covering the entire shift. That's very frustrating for someone who is several pay grades lower, who still has to work the extra 4 hours, while somebody who's several pay grades higher is just coming in to cover those shifts. Now, I don't want to begrudge the folks who are on the COS team, because they're our members and we support them and we think the COS team makes sense.
And COS stands for?
Central Office Operations Specialists. That proposal could work, I think, if they were covering shifts. Right now, the superintendents have been given a lot of leeway on how they use those positions. We think they should be covering shifts, not just covering breaks. We think the pay and benefits of all the folks on the front line should come up. And that would be a sign that the management has your back.
Pay and overtime. Take that off the table. How else isn't management having the backs of the COs? That's my question to you. What's an example of where they're not having their backs covered?
Well, I'll just repeat what I said. Retaliation.
Okay.
Excessive amounts of TRD.
It's TRD.
Temporary relief from duty. not consulting them or listening to them or checking in with them about the practical ramifications of policies that are issued from central office. And then I think also in this desperate situation they find themselves in, not fighting hard enough to get a solution on the table done. That's really, I think, right now, off the top of my head, those are several examples that leave our members feeling unsupported.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Steve? Anything else, Steve?
I don't think so. I think I don't want to leave the impression that, I'm pretty tough on the management. That's my job. That's what the union does. And I'm here to express what our members have expressed to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not universal. Not all the members agree. I think Connor knows from his time there. I guess I would say this, this has gone on for 6 years, and there's nobody, there's no entity in the world that wants to solve this problem more than the VSEA and our members. And we are willing to work with the management, even when we're critical of them, to try to resolve this. And we hope that you'll join us in trying to move the issue along and speed up the response.
One more question, if I may.
Yeah.
Is it appropriate for me to ask you what the resistance is to body cams?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that question.
Yes.
So let me just take one step back so you can have this, just so it's a little clearer. There's two kinds of bargaining. There's labor interest bargaining, which we're going to start in August when we're bargaining over the pay and benefits and working conditions of our members. That's the big contract. Then there is something called impact bargaining. And that is when the management is implementing a policy, which they have a right to do. They are obligated under the contract to, when it changes working conditions, to come to the union to bargain the impacts of that. And they generally have about 45 days, and then they can implement the policy. So our members first received notice from the department that there was interest in negotiating the impacts of a policy around body cams on February 5th of this year. This year. And we have had a couple of meetings about it. And then the meetings occurred. The only reason it really happened is our members approached the administration and said, we're dying here. We need help with the staffing crisis. We have some ideas. Would you meet with us to discuss them? And in the context of that, the administration said, we'd also like to impact bargain the issue of body-worn cameras. So there's a lot of thoughts about body-worn cameras and concerns about how, sort of the impacts of it. The reason that they have not been implemented isn't because of collective bargaining, and it isn't because of the SEA.
Oh, okay.
We put the money in, the cameras have been purchased. You said they've
been there for 2 years.
We said they would be implemented once there's a policy in place.
How long ago was that?
We did that during COVID. We did that in 21.
2 years, because we bought them 2 years ago. They've been sitting there. So that was a great investment.
Yeah, we did it when we were on Zoom. It was 21. We started doing. And that was the result of the Downs Markland report. And that was a result of the news article about sexual misconduct.
We can't do anything about the past. We can only move forward.
But we have the cameras. We put the language in.
You did.
We put the language in, we put the money in, and we said the cameras will be used once there's a policy in place.
One thing I would say, Madam Chair, and I think actually management might agree with this. When you read news stories, maybe Haley probably more than anybody else, when you read news stories about corrections, like the one that was in 7 days, reserve judgment. Don't assume that the person mentioned in the story is guilty. Don't assume that there aren't mitigating circumstances the reporter didn't report. And you all know this because you've all talked to the press and thought, how did they get that from what I said? Our members would ask that when an article appears, that there be a moment of calm and say, let's see how this plays out. And so I just would leave that because sometimes the facts on the ground are very different than what's reported in the media.
We've lived that.
No doubt.
Well,
Yeah, just going back to real quick. So the only thing that you guys are waiting on is policy from the administration to pursue, and or that's why.
policy, and there's got to be implementation of the policy. Both parties need to agree.
Okay, so we're in the midst, we've met with the administration twice now to discuss this and to discuss the staffing crisis. Our members wanted to talk about solving the staffing crisis. The administration said, okay, well, we want to talk about this body cam issue. So we've met a couple of times, and I believe we're scheduled to meet again on May 28th. And so we will continue to talk with them about the impacts. And, you know, this impact bargaining happens across all state government. And often the management and the VSEA come to an agreement about the impacts. Not always, but often. And then the management can implement the policy anyway. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Thank you.
So that finishes it up for today, for folks.
It's not there we go.
It's been an ongoing- This has been an ongoing conversation for many years. Long time. All the time issue. I remember when there was a commissioner, Rob Hoffman. That was way back around 2010.
Yeah.
Had to deal with overtime. That's fine. So it's ebbs and flows. It's more serious than other times and that might be in a more serious situation currently. So that's it for today. Tomorrow morning, we are going to be taking a field trip and then we'll see what happens tomorrow afternoon. We are going to have committee discussion.
We should have all been at the Habitat for Humanity build out on
When was that? Today?
tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
because we could have done some extra work on what's going to be turning into house.
Okay.
You can't win them all, Mary.
So we're going to need to spend some time on H219, the veto, bill that was vetoed. We're still going to meet a few of us, Troy and Sean and myself and James will be meeting then
Bless you.
as soon as we finish today to kind of talk over. It's a constitutional issue and Ledge Council has rulings on one side and the administration feels differently on the other. So we're going to try to figure out if there's some common ground and then we'll see where we go as a committee as a whole. But we'll have to spend some time tomorrow talking about this in the afternoon. Let's see where we go, because if we can correct this, we have language that's workable on both sides. I don't know if we'll get there or not. Then you have to do a separate bill or you have to tack it on to another bill. So
We have another bill we tack it on to.
that's what I spoke to Martin Lalonde. There may be something possibly. We just don't know at this point for that. So stay tuned. So we will be back at some point tomorrow. So we're done right now.